Hey everyone, we are at the front of our 2011 F-150. We're going to be changing the brakes and rotors on this today and actually doing a little bit of an upgrade. I actually did the rear brakes yesterday. Today we're going to cover the front. So let's jump right in here and get this done. So first of all, we got to take our wheel off. And today we're going to be using our Dewalt 18 volt XRP series. This is actually an old impact wrench, but I put this adapter on here in order to be able to use my new 20 volt max batteries. This actually has been a lifesaver because I have several tools that are actually really good tools, but the batteries were getting old and wouldn't hold charge and all that. So anyways, let's go ahead and get in here and pull these lug nuts off. This is going to be a 21 millimeter impact socket. Here. So after we pulled our wheel off, the next thing we're going to do is take this caliper off because we've got to get in here and be able to get to our caliper bracket to be able to pull it off too to get it out of the way. You might be able to actually pull this whole bracket off, everything all together, but I'm not going to because I'm going to need to change the brake pads anyways. So I'm going to go ahead and pull them off separately. That way I don't have to worry about taking them apart later. So we're going to use our 1/2 inch socket on this bolt right here on the top. And then there's one down here at the bottom also. So I went ahead and turned the wheels to be able to point this stuff out a little bit better. So it's a little easier to get in here to this. So you just got 2 bolts, and that actually loosens your caliper right there. So I'm going to set this thing up here for right now. Another thing too, you don't want to let this hang down on your brake line. So I'm going to set it up here where it's free floating. I may tie it off or something. I might need to move it again here in a minute. But if I do, I'm going to put like a zip tie through one of these bolt holes and hang it to something in here in order to keep it from putting pressure and hanging on that brake line. So we've got the caliper up here. In order to get your brake pads loose, you just pull them right out the sides. These pads, you can tell they've really been hot. They are cracked all over the place. Same way with the back side, they're cracked really bad. There's actually a really bad wear groove right here in this one. So our 21 millimeter socket that we used on our wheels actually fits the bolts back here for your caliper bracket. So we're going to see if we can fit this impact in here and get them loose that way. That actually made it pretty easy. So 2 bolts is all it takes to get that loose. So here on our rotor, there's actually bolt holes in this, and that's exactly what those holes are for some bolts. I lucked out today and was able to find these bolts that actually will work, and this makes taking your rotor off so much easier. Now, if you don't have bolts, you can take this rotor off by taking a hammer and beating the back side of this thing and just beating all around that thing until it breaks loose. But as you can see, it is stuck on there right now, and that's just from rust and heat and all that kind of stuff over time, and it kind of bonds that to the spindle or the hub, and sometimes makes it pretty difficult to take loose. The absolute quickest and easiest way is to get you a couple bolts, and these are a 1/2 inch head. I'm not sure exactly what the threads are and stuff on there, and so we can just thread these in, and it should just pop that rotor right off of there. In fact, I've already seen it move. That makes doing this job so much easier than trying to beat that off of there with a hammer. In fact, I've got to thank one of my viewers for this because I knew those holes were there, but I never really tried to find a bolt to fit that, and I always just stuck to the old way of like beating it with a hammer. You know, and if it was something, if I wasn't going to reuse it, then I really didn't care too much. So I just beat it, and sometimes it took 5 or 10 minutes to get that thing to break loose. And with these bolts, You can see it's already loose. It makes it so much simpler to do it this way than trying to use a hammer and brute force to get it loose. Also, if you were going to reuse your brake rotors, then this is the way to do it without damaging the old ones. So what we're going to be replacing the factory rotors with are these Detroit axle drilled and slotted rotors. I also, not only did I want to replace the rotors, but I wanted to upgrade them. So this was the solution for doing that. I ordered these off of Amazon. There was actually a few companies I was trying to decide of what brakes and rotors to go with. One of them was Power Stop, because you hear so much about them, and it seems like all of your car enthusiast channels on TV and stuff tend to push Power Stop. Well, the Power Stop was almost twice as expensive as what these were, and they offered a 3-year, 36,000 mile warranty, whereas these actually offer a 10-year warranty. Now, I have no idea what the warranty on a set of rotors, is going to cover. I don't know if that's against warpage or breakage. They all say manufacturer defect, but is your rotors warping a manufacturer defect? I don't know. I do know that we tow a lot with our truck, and I wanted to get something that would stay cooler. So I went with those slotted and drilled rotors in order to kind of help for that and hopefully give us a little bit more stopping power by keeping the brakes cool while we're towing. We tow probably 2 or 3 times a week with our truck, whether it's a horse trailer, whether it's a utility trailer, hauling lawnmowers, hay wagons, or, just whatever. We use it all the time to tow with. So I figured, why not? We're going to have to go ahead and change our brakes and rotors. Let's go ahead and change it with kind of an upgrade. So I ended up going with this, like I say, simply because of the price. And I have actually gotten some product from Detroit Axle before, and they seem like they have been some pretty good quality stuff. These are zinc plated to hopefully keep them from rusting and hopefully, help them to last longer. And the price of them was $272 versus the Power Stop at $536 after shipping and after taxes and all that kind of stuff. So let's jump back in here and get this put back together. So these rotors are no joke. These things they look really nice. They've got that zinc coating on there to hopefully keep them from rusting. So let's put it on and let's get this thing back together. So I'm gonna go ahead and put the caliper bracket back on. And it's always a good idea to put a little bit of anti-seize on your bolts in here, because they do tend to get a lot of heat and some moisture and stuff on them. And when you have that going on, they tend to rust things up. So while we're in here too, we're going to go ahead and replace our little sliders right here on each side of our rotor. These things should just pop right out of there. And they just clip back into place. Try to get you a close-up of this. Just take your tang on this end and you're going to hook it on the back side towards your rotor. And then as you push it down, it just springs into place, and that kind of clamps it and lets it hold in there so it doesn't fall out and it's not rattling around. So now we just got to put our pads in, and all they do is just slide one in on each side. It's always a good idea too to put a little bit of that brake lube on these sliders. Yep, there it goes. So the last thing we have to do is actually compress our pistons back in on our caliper. That way we have room for all the extra pad, or the new pad that's on the brake pads themselves. If you don't compress those back, they won't fit over your calipers, because your old calipers, as they wear, these pistons move out and that's where they stay at. So you've got to press those back in. So in order to do that, you want to take the cap off your brake reservoir. That way you kind of let it vent, because as you press these back in, it's going to push brake fluid into your brake reservoir, and you could potentially pop that cap off of there. It may not hurt anything, but it's always good to just kind of loosen it up first. I'm going to use one of my old brake pads, and I'm going to take a C-clamp, and I'm just going to clamp it from the back of the caliper onto that pad. Now, one thing, you don't really want to clamp this on anything important, and you don't want to clamp it extremely tight. If it's not moving in with just minimal pressure, then you may have something going on with your caliper. I'm sure that they actually make a tool for this, but I don't have one, and this has always worked good for me in the past. Now, on this dual piston caliper, I am having to move back and forth like you side to side, because right in the middle there's this bracket right here, and you can't get to the middle to pull both of them in at the same time. So it's not a big deal. I'm just moving back and forth and just working it in nice and slow. The one on the bottom actually feels like it's a little tighter than what this one is. I may end up having to keep an eye on that. So once you get your pistons pressed back in, then it's time just to put your caliper back over your brakes and bolt them on. So that's pretty much all there is to it. We put our wheels back on. These lug nuts are supposed to be torqued, I believe, to 150 foot-pounds, I believe. Don't quote me on that, but I think that's what it's supposed to be. I also wanted to say that I am in no means a professional. I'm not a mechanic. You know, I'm just an individual that decided to upgrade their brakes and do it themselves. I do a lot of this kind of work myself to kind of save on mechanic bills. And if you've got just a few tools and stuff, a job like this really is not very hard at all. So if you enjoyed today's video and you found it helpful, make sure to give it a big thumbs up. I'd really appreciate that. Also, while you're there, subscribe to the channel and follow along with us. We have several videos pertaining to our 2011 F-150, and there's actually going to be a few more. One coming up is actually going to be a 10-year review on this truck. I've had it, I bought it brand new. I've had it for a little over 10 years, and I've driven it 132,000 miles. So I kind of wanted to go through and tell people my thoughts and opinions on this. It's got the 3.5 liter EcoBoost engine. I know there was a lot of question on this engine whenever it was new about longevity and that kind of stuff, durability. I just figured that, you know, I'm going to do a video to kind of tell a few of the things that I've had, you know, with this truck, problems, that kind of stuff, and what kind of money I've spent on it over the last 10 years. So stay tuned for that, and we'll see you on the next one.